So tonight I'd like to introduce Les Hoffman, one of our frequent speakers, and he's been delivering a series called Veteran Value, and he's got another installment in that series. So I'll turn it right over to Les Hoffman.
Thank you. I'll see if I can't share my other screen and get us going and turn on the presentation mode. Just let me know if you can see the slideshow.
Yes, looks good.
Perfect. So again, this is another topic that's come up in many discussions, helping, coaching. I like to use the word Sherpaing because we're always kind of in it with members. But with veteran value, again, we hope that people land a job after they transition, but they continue to move up. So that's always been the focus of veteran value is, you know, we continue on to move up in our careers. And when I say that, I don't always mean moving up to be the CEO of a company. I know folks want to be individual contributors. We have the meaning of success defined in many different ways. So not just single one pathway or so forth, but this topic comes up a bunch. And what it has to deal with is experience versus education. And, you know, when walking folks through it, I don't think I was that great, you know, being a coach or a mentor or Sherpa before, but I do think it's an interesting thing and it's evolved over time. And I think that not only employers, but the educational system has evolved as well. So again, let's tackle this subject today. As you know, I like to put some type of definition and structure around it. So we'll go through these items today. Again, we'll tackle what we can consider or what we believe is, you know, the definition of this. And I tried to pick out some good definitions for the importance, like what's really the value and the monetary differences. You'll learn that there's certain impressions that can be created. How can we leverage this? And then the last piece is always action, right? Where do I take my career? And again, I think this topic is a little bit different because it has a little bit longer horizon than maybe just some of the transactional stuff, the transitioning, and sometimes even promotions have a time bound. This really has to deal with considering your whole career. So let's just jump right into it. So definitions, education, and you can read for yourself, but I do want to point out some highlighted items here. So around education, we usually associate this with some type of school, university, certification, and so forth. I do like more of a broader term on that. But I always found it interesting that, you know, when education, we usually talk about experience. And when I looked up the definition, it had literally the word experience intertwined in the definition. When we take a look at experience, the key things here is that usually there's some type of duration, period of time that we're talking about experience in a profession, right? Skills or something that's gained over that period of time. And the other thing too about experience, and we'll touch on this a little bit more, and I want you to make sure that you keep in your mind the impression, right? The experience and the impression. I know the definition here is supposed to be more broad-based. I believe I took it from Oxford. But again, I'll try to interweave that with some of the items going forward and try to connect the dots as I've seen it, you know, click the light bulb for some other folks. And definitely the reason why I speak to these items is because it's highlighted and illuminated things for myself as well. So for you visual folks out here, I thought this was interesting, just kind of searching the web to find the difference, right? Some folks think of knowledge as being able to identify the dots, people with the experience being able to connect the dots. But you can easily see that can take variations of, you know, again, different perspectives. But then it also can get out of hand and things can get pretty crazy pretty quickly, right? So let's go back to the definition. And really what we're asking, right, is what's more valuable? Right? I get this again. This is a question I usually get when our Eagle Group members, you know, feel like they're in a position where they have a deficit of one or another. And let's face it, right? If you don't have the education level that a job or a role or even an industry is asking for, sometimes you feel that deficit, or vice versa. You feel like you have a ton of education or you've just got that shiny new degree or certifications or whatever the case may be, right? But then you have a lack of experience. You don't have that 3, 5, 10-year experience. So what is more valuable? So again, it depends on the field. Some fields like education, if you're going to go into university, you need to have those certifications because they're just going to look at that first. They even advise you to look at your or have your resume structured with that education up front, right? Others, maybe not so much. And again, I feel like that continually changes. I'm not going to go into those details because I feel like the Eagle Source or Eagle Group resources and the folks that we have that continually come to these meetings can help with that. But it does make sense that if you know what field you want to move forward in and kind of control your destiny, that makes sense. How far along in your career? And for most, education and certifications are a good way of saying that you're committed to learning, or at least have committed some time. The further along you get in your career, obviously they want the experience. Can you problem solve, troubleshoot, and so forth? And again, education attainment is closely correlated, and that's just a fancy way of saying if you get more education, at least the right education and certifications, it does lead to higher salaries. It's just a proven fact. And again, higher education is especially important to folks earlier in their career because it's just a good way to separate from the pack. Now, is that always the right case? No, but if you're going to play the law of averages, if you're going to try to use numbers and statistics in your advantage, well, it's good to know. And again, especially in those fields where it's highly desirable and it's already built into the structure of those hiring managers, the HR, and those companies from a compensation standpoint. Go where the money is what I tell folks, right? There's other pieces to that, but again, I'm trying to simplify this. I mean, you should be happy within your role and so forth, but it's key that you go where everything's kind of working in that direction. Now, the caveat of this is that a degree only proves that you can succeed in academia. Now, the disclaimer is that a lot of these universities, a lot of these trades, certifications, they're getting better about partnering up with corporations, getting sponsored by corporations and doing a lot of things. So again, it is kind of getting blended. And then work experience, right, can make you a great match today. Again, what you learned last year is probably valuable, especially all the pitfalls, the challenges that you ran into, how a system broke down, even technology and the application of that. But then you may lack skills important for the advancement tomorrow, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So it's important to consider that. So really, what's more valuable, right? And do employers prefer experience or education, right? It really depends on the level of education as an entry piece or experience to see if you're a great fit. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. Again, this is a wide subject. I'm trying to pare it down, but again, I think we're going to have a good Q&A afterwards about really what's more valuable. So let's go to the numbers, right? I pulled this one specifically, and you can see that I pulled it from the Minnesota State Career website with the key down there. And oftentimes I get a question about, hey, maybe I didn't go to a fancy school or have a targeted degree. Do they make a difference? And the answer is yes, they do. Now, that's maybe not something we all want to hear. It's maybe not a decision or something that we want to choose, but I've done essentially both in my career, and I've heard of others, right? I went to Iowa State University for my marketing degree, right? The fallacy there is that I had a job. I already knew I was going in the Marine Corps when I went there, but I did go to the University of Minnesota for my MBA. So, kind of a middle of the pack school and a degree for my undergrad and a top 10 school for my MBA. And I will tell you for a fact that companies are looking for specific degrees for specific schools. And a lot of that comes with, one, the notoriety, right? They know what they're going to get. They know the curriculum, and they have history of hiring from those schools and having people work out. So again, if you're playing the law of numbers and the law of averages, that's what they're going for. And in often cases, especially with large corporations within the Twin Cities, going to a local school, a local university, you're going to have those tie-ins and networking anyway. So there's a lot of things working in with you. But the quick thing I want to show you is that there is a large disparity, right? And for folks choosing whether or not to make it to the next level, maybe you don't have your bachelor's or associate degrees yet, I would say that you should highly consider it. Now, again, where you go, that has to be a decision on what the ROI is for you. But you can also see on the other side, rather than just making a whole bunch of money, the unemployment rate. And that can be told two stories. One is that once you get a job, you're probably not getting fired because you're in a role that is highly valued by companies and you have the skill set to be able to achieve that. The second is that, again, you'll be able to not fend off a ton of competition with a whole bunch of people necessarily going for the same roles. Not to say that there won't be other candidates, but again, it's better to compete against 5 other people versus 2,000 other people, right? And getting essentially washed away. So one of the things I did want to take from this slide is you can see that that monthly rate is there. And hold on one second. I wanted to annualize those numbers out because, again, weekly, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I took those and took kind of the biggest ones: high school graduate, someone with an associate's degree, someone with a bachelor's degree, and someone with a master's degree. Again, these numbers kind of give you a pinpoint. There's definitely bigger ranges, but what you can see in the annual rate is, one, the numbers jump. So again, just facts. I don't want to lead anybody. If you can't afford the cost of education, well then guess what? You can't afford the cost of education. It's not something that I take lightly. It took me a ton of time between my undergrad and my MBA to figure it out, right? So I'm definitely in that bucket with some folks that don't just get them back to back or can even afford that, right? The flip side of that, though, is if your attainment, again, this doesn't even talk about the roles, this just talks about the levels, you can see the difference. So again, if you're looking for that attainment of higher paying jobs, that companies are looking for that. Now, what I won't go into, and again, I've kind of said, is that it's encompassed in that education, the program, the syllabus, what these universities do to prepare at those levels, the graduates, for entering those jobs. And I can say for a fact that most of the notarized universities do that. Again, it's going to be academia, but if you understand financials, financial systems, marketings, and the practices for businesses to be reviewed as publicly traded companies, you're going to learn a ton more than where you sat before. Now, all right, let's go with experience, right? We spent a lot of time on education. I know we could go down that rabbit hole and be there for a lot. But one of the things, and this is super small print, it wasn't, I put this on here because you probably recognize this. This is the pay chart, military pay chart for 2022. And the reason why I have it on here is, again, when I was in the military, I stared at this thing all day. I wanted to know how much I get paid and so forth. But the interesting thing about military veterans is that you're already attuned to the experience piece. Again, there's more aspects of experience, more dimensions to that, especially about, you know, good experiences versus a bad experience and how you're able to apply that. But for all in all, the cool thing is that veterans already understand this. And most people in business, yeah, tenure and so forth, but we break it down even further, right? Every 2 years, you basically get a bump, which is really, really cool. Now, the caveat of that is a lot of times we don't see this, a lot of times we don't remember this, but in some shape, fashion, or form, we engage it. HR has the same thing on their side. They don't tell you oftentimes, and they sure as heck don't bring it up when, you know, negotiating your salary or your rate or whatever the case may be when you're interviewing, right? But they do have a scale, and you can see here, I took one of these, and I think this is in regards to a company. I didn't share that just for confidentiality, but you can see here years of experience, but then also the level. Now, it doesn't go into specific roles, but they have a chart that they're using to range. And they probably have some deviation of, you know, 5% or 3% above or below their target, right? So understand that it's good to understand that there's something like this on the other side of the coin, right? But I think you're starting to understand that in this, you also have different levels. You have the degree, and what it is a matrix. So folks start understanding that it's not necessarily education or experience, it should be both. So the question, right, is not so much versus, the right question is, what's the right combination for you? And again, going back to that first statement, I said members are usually, you know, putting this out when they feel like they have a deficit or one or the other, right? And again, when looking at this, is it's really the impressions. And this is what I try to tell folks and get them to the next part, right? Get them past the fears, the challenges, the mountain that's standing in front of them. I just say, take the first steps. So, again, when we talk about education, schooling, you've either done it or you haven't, or you've either started it and you're on your way, right? Or you haven't. That's pretty cut and dry. And again, for most folks going into the military, you got a high school diploma or a GED or some equivalent, right? So that you've made it through and been honorably discharged. Beyond that, again, I would say it really poses the question of where you want to go in your career and what level are you trying to reach? And is it realistic? Now, the key thing about veterans that I think we underserve and undervalue is the experience. Again, you're getting exposed to all these different elements that are taught at the MBA level, like management, right? Even though you're not exposed to financials, you get handed a weapon system, right? That's over $2,000. And then you're immediately in charge of a squad that you multiply that. And then you're getting crypto equipment that costs money and integration, right? Then from a management system, right, you got communications. Those are systems, those are protocols, right? You have safety that's included. You have HR because your people are going on leave and so forth, right? All these different pieces are encapsulated in that experience. And what you need to, and this says proxies of proof, you need to prove, right, that experience is valuable, even though it's in a different vocation. That experience and problem solving is still important. So here, this is the reason why I spent, a lot of time making sure that I went through impressions, that two things matter when you're applying for a job or pitching for your promotion. And the pitching for your promotion might be just, again, the water cooler talk, the one chance that you get to talk with your, manager each week, or your engagement with the executives, right? What you want to do is not just talk about the weather, right? You can include that into, hey, yeah, but I had a question in regards to this and, so forth. The two things that matter are your ability to create value or results, or the ability for you to convince other folks that you can create value or results for them, right? So impressions matter. If you're wasting the time talking about the weather, right? And you can please read the room. If someone just is looking like they're beat up, yeah, maybe not lean into, something, but take your chances on making sure that you're creating a great impression. Now, the reason why I feel like this is so important, right, is again, you're creating your own story. And this comes down to proof and storytelling, right? So, of course, I'm going to give you an example. So employee A, and just think about this, right? You engage with employee A, and you're either in your conversation or so forth, but you obtain that person has an MBA from University of Minnesota. Great. That's kind of your labeling of that person. I don't know what you think of U of M. Again, this is your own perspective. You don't have to respond or so forth. Now, later on that week, you play with employee B, right? And they tell you that they have a bachelor's degree, but their real claim to fame and what they feel proud about is that they have 5 years in product, right? And it happens to be the field that they love, enjoy, and so forth, right? And the last person, let's say Friday afternoon, right? You got a charismatic person, maybe not, employee C, right? And they're telling me about how they just love to be involved in the launch of 13 new products, and that's creating, $13 million in ROI, right? Now, if you were put in the situation, which would you promote, right? Just based on those facts, would you gravitate towards C? Would you gravitate towards A? Would you gravitate towards the implied experience in B, right? So again, this is a real life deal, and I've actually, in preparation for this, I've asked a couple of folks where they felt like, hey, they had a conversation with somebody that knew about a role promotion. Maybe they were in cycle for a promotion or so forth, and they felt like they maybe had missed a chance. So again, when it all comes down to is that this is happening every day, and impressions change every day. So how are you shaping those impressions using, your level of education and experience, so that you don't get missed over for those promotions? And if you're transitioning, this needs to be at the forefront of your discussion, and you need to have this articulated and using, again, the Eagle Group resources, right, to make sure that you have that finely tuned. Now, So it comes down to your long-term career journey. One second, I got a cough. Apologies. And where do you want your career to go? And I pulled this off of the web, and what I thought was interesting, again, it starts out with high school diploma. This could be GED, right? Step 2 college degree. I thought it was interesting because, again, I would put in military and certifications from the military in there as well, but it did show different paths and different steps. And even though I feel like in my journey, I felt, I'm at a position where I could consider myself successful. I'm probably on step 8, and looking back, could I have been on step 4, right? And the answer to that is maybe, maybe not. I know I've talked to other folks, and they never want to be a VP. They just don't want that responsibility. They don't want to be away from their family, their kids, and they understand, the travel and items that has. Great, but when you talk about education and experiences and what your career path is, I think it's pretty clear that, again, you should be either asking yourself, but more importantly, having a peer group or a resource group, again, like Eagle Group, that you're actively putting this thing together. And whatever your path is, right, that you simulate that. And then you take a look at, do I need another level of education, or am I okay? Do I need another level of experience? And more importantly, from an experience standpoint, do I need to be engaging with legal because I don't know how to put together negotiations or contracts? Do I need to be engaging financials because I can't put together a pro forma estimate on what our sales and revenues are going to be? Do I need to go to HR because, quite frankly, I have a deficit in experience and I need to understand where I can go out and get the developers I need for my UI or whatever the case may be? So again, you can see that the different career paths and different skills. I'm not going to go into too much of the details, but I did want to show this. So for FedEx, and shout out to FedEx, you can see that they all start from package handler, right? So again, I think if you look at people's careers, it could be FedEx, it could jump and so forth. But I just thought this was interesting because this doesn't seem like it's very hard for someone individual to put together, right? But at the same time, I think it shows the complexity, right? This is probably more realistic than the other one. Hey, you just have a path and connect some dots. I feel like this one's probably, again, more realistic of, hey, do I go this route or this route? Well, it also depends on what opening there is versus, I'll take this. I also feel like in transition, if I were just to take FedEx, right, and ground and put career paths, some of these might be in military, some of these might be outside the military. Not everyone retires from the military with 30 years, right? Not everyone just jumps out after 4, right? So again, putting something like this together and saying, what do you want, allows you to focus versus saying, I'll do anything, right? It keeps you on the path. And then now you really do put your education and experience to work, and you're fine tuning that. And again, creating those positive impressions, right? So again, I'll say I'm an advocate for the Eagle Group because they can help your journey both upward and beyond. And again, I'm a direct product of having these great resources and so forth, helping with that. So in conclusion, you really have to deal with, and you should be dealing with, education experience together. I don't think that a company necessarily looks at one or the other because they want both. And you really have to craft how you're going to create that impression about your education experience, especially if you feel like you're lacking one or the other. I do believe there's opportunities to show and showcase where the value is. So again, I hope that you can see that refining these action plans and focusing your approach will help you reach your full potential. And now I'll allow Renee to stop the recording and go into questions.